Upon us, but Kyrie Irving's availability in Brooklyn is still in doubt. How will the new guidelines for unvaccinated players change Kyrie's outlook? Meanwhile, the Nets beat the Lakers so decisively on Sunday that AD is questioning where his team is at already. And we'll go through the best images of the NBA season with historic NBA photographer Andrew Bernstein. Plus, after Brady's successful return to New England, what will be the most anticipated NBA reunion this coming season? No case of the Mondays here. The Jump starts right now. Hey, what's up, people in the studio with me? How about that?
Here and here and
We're joined in studio by ESPN NBA reporter Ramona Shelburne and the Undefeated's Clinton Yates. Thank you guys for hanging out, of course.
Yeah.
And yes, there was actual NBA basketball on Sunday. Without Russ and LeBron, the Lakers took on the Nets without KD, Harden, and Kyrie. The Nets won easily, but the focus stayed on what Kyrie's availability could be when Brooklyn's season begins in a couple of weeks. Steve Nash told reporters post-game he had no update on Kyrie's status playing in the preseason and beyond to this point. So today, Tim Bontemps and Bobby Marks report that the NBA and NBA Players Association agreed to a salary reduction for games missed in cities with vaccine mandates, which currently include New York and San Francisco. According to their sources, players will lose just over 1% of their salary for each game missed. For Kyrie Irving, that would mean nearly $381,000 per game if he misses a home game. Ramona, will this agreement with the NBA PA alter Kyrie's outlook?
Well, it altered Andrew Wiggins' outlook. I mean, I don't know what it means for Kyrie. That'll be up to him. I think of all the players that we've heard from so far, he seems fairly entrenched in his position. And it was interesting, George. Like, I was at the game yesterday, and you saw the Nets all practicing together in San Diego all week. They had a really nice training camp. Everybody talked about how hard it was, how fun it was to play all of them together. They were sick of playing each other by the end of the week because they were just going against each other all the time. But Kyrie could have played in that game yesterday because it was in Los Angeles. There's not the same mandate here in Los Angeles. And because he's not going to practice when they go back to Brooklyn or play when they go back to Brooklyn, it's almost like you have the Kyrie on games and the Kyrie off games. Yesterday would have been a good opportunity to put him out there, but Steve Nash essentially said, yeah, that was never consideration. We weren't playing James Harden or Kevin Durant or Kyrie in this game. And it was interesting because I think they have a pretty good idea of how they want to play. They have a pretty good idea of what this team is going to look like. The question is it going to look like that for half the season? Or will it look like that for all of the season?
Yeah. Clinton, what do you make of all this?
I'm sorry. I can't take seriously the notion that Kyrie Irving just might miss half the games because he's not going to get vaccinated. I mean, to me, that on a leadership level is kind of unconscionable when you think about what it is this team is trying to do. They've got a real shot to win an NBA title, and to think that he's going to be so dug in on his stance like this, it's hard to understand because, listen, we can argue back and forth about the safety measures, but the bottom line is that if you're not vaccinated, you can't play basketball. You know what I mean? And I think from just a player hooper standpoint, I think he's eventually going to give in. I think there's an outside chance that maybe he is vaccinated and he's just trying to make some larger point to the media about privacy and so on and so forth. But if I'm a Nets fan, this is devastating. We're coming up on the season now, and guys aren't even playing ball because of things that are unrelated on some levels. Hate to see it.
You know, and right now, George, it's LA and it's San Francisco and New York, but the expectation around the league is that that kind of mandate could go into other markets as well throughout this year. So we're talking about how, and I mean, it's a funny irony. It's not funny for the teams or the players involved, but theoretically, Kyrie could play when they go through San Francisco because he'd be a visiting player, but not in Brooklyn, okay? Because it only affects the home players. But I think the expectation is that that is going to be more of the norm as this season goes on. And so we're talking about half the home games because he plays in New York and there's a government mandate there. But that could expand.
Yeah.
How do his teammates feel about this? Do we have any sense, or the coaching staff and the organization?
Look, when Steve Nash answered that question, it was less than 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about this. I don't have anything there for you on it. They don't want this to become a distraction, even though it is. You could not want something to be a distraction, and it's a distraction. But they're doing their best to just move along and play the way they play the way they're going to have to play, regardless of whether he's there or not. But I really got the sense when they were down in San Diego, they went to Joe Tsai, the owner of the team. He has a house down in La Jolla. They went and had a team bonding experience. Right. They've got to do things as a team this year because the rules are so much more relaxed in terms of COVID protocols that nobody got to do last year. And I think they have been able to build a sense of camaraderie, even despite Kyrie not being able to play at home or practice at home?
I would say it's a little bit more than a distraction at this point. You know what I'm saying? It's a legitimate availability thing that affects whether or not this team is going to be able to win going forward. I think distraction is a massive understatement.
Let's move forward here after an opening week of camp where Andrew Wiggins explained his reasoning to not be vaccinated. Steve Kerr confirmed Sunday that Wiggins is now vaccinated and expects to be clear to play home games once the season starts in San Francisco. Golden State's home opener is against the Clippers, October 21st on ESPN here. And Clinton, is this a matter of money overcoming concerns for Wiggins? What do you make of it?
I think this is a guy who just kind of grew up on this one. You know, we saw a couple different things in terms of him coming out in the public and stating his thoughts on what was going to happen. And then he tried to sort of sneak that religious exemption by and got roundly mocked by a lot of people in public. And then came to a decision that, once again, I think was a basketball one. When you saw what Kerr said, he just said, listen, I don't want to talk about this anymore. You know what I mean? Just like Steve Nash. It's like, can we get this over with? But again, the power of pressure in certain matters, and in this case, public health, I think really affected him. You know, he's a guy that was an everyday player for him, a durable guy. But when you come out there and try to act like that, and then everybody says, listen, man, this is not what you're going to do. This doesn't make sense. Change his mind, and I think it's a healthier decision. I hope that works out for the Warriors.
You know, George, in the NFL, they reframe the issue of vaccination as availability and accountability to your teammates. And I think when I heard Wiggins talk last week, and he said it was my decision or my problem, not yours, and it felt like it was very personal for him in the sense that he didn't want to do something he didn't want to do. But if you reframe that, and I think that's how his Warriors teammates were talking about it, is we need you, man.
Right.
We need you out there. And are you available to us or not? And I think the more the NBA goes in this direction, the more you'll see you saw even last week, it went from 90% of players who had got at least their first shot to 95.
Right, Woj reported that.
Yeah.
There's going to be that trickle.
95% of players have been
Yeah, at least the first shot. Not fully vaccinated, but at least the first shot. And it's going in that direction. And look, there's a nice way to do it where you incentivize people. Like they're not testing every day. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to test every day.
Yeah.
You can go out on the road, you can see people, you can do things, you can kind of almost get back to normal. But if you are vaccinated, they make it really uncomfortable for you. And so it's that's how the NBA has set this up. But in these two markets, New York and San Francisco, you lose money.
Yeah.
That gets your attention.
Yeah, that would change things for sure, and it has perhaps with Andrew Wiggins. So, all right, back to Sunday's game where LeBron and Russ didn't play. Anthony Davis did for 11 minutes, but the Lakers gave up 123 points to the Nets without any of their top stars. And afterwards, AD was not pleased with the Lakers' performance.
Oh, we're way behind. Getting movement on offense, quality shots, defensively, talking, getting our schemes right, rebounding, very huge. We're not boxing out. And that was the main takeaway. Just, offensive we're not really too worried about it, especially when we get Brian, Melo, TA, Russ out there. But it was just our first game to see where we are, and we got to do a better job defensively, especially blocking out.
So, Ramona, do you share AD's concern after Lakers preseason game number 1?
No. What's he talking? They're fine. Like, he's the only guy who played even a little.
Yeah.
Only of the regulars. I actually thought they looked okay. I thought Malik Monk looked really good the other day.
Sure.
But I actually think it's a good sign that Anthony Davis is saying those words.
Bingo.
Because he's got a sense of urgency. And it reminds, I've said this before, it's almost like if you close your eyes, last year didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, the Lakers are back to that 2020 team that won the championship, where they're fired up, they're hungry, they're not coming off that really short layoff. Where I was talking to a coach yesterday on the Lakers where they said, that short layoff after the bubble, they were fried. And I think that team did not have the same spirit and hunger that they did in 2020. Whereas this year, they have the vets who are coming back are hungry because they didn't win last year and they had a nice long break. And then guys like Russ, Carmelo, DeAndre Jordan, they haven't won. And they have the hunger of veterans who are here to win a ring. And so they really have a good spirit to them. Anthony Davis is right in that they look behind. But look at the schedule coming up for the Lakers, okay, George? Their first 10 games, I went through to look at the schedule, and that looks like a team that could easily start 9-1, 8-2.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, the first 3 games, those are tough games. So let's say they go 2-1 in those 3.
Yeah.
Look at that strip.
lot of
Thunder,
winnable
Cavs,
games.
Rockets. That should be 5 wins right there.
Yeah.
That game against the Trailblazers, that'll be a tough one.
Yeah.
But they have a really easy opening schedule in terms of win percentage last season. And it's always like that for teams that are going to be on in the backloaded schedule after the Super Bowl.
Tons of ABC
Lakers,
games,
Warriors,
nationally televised games.
So this early part of the schedule for a team that doesn't have a lot of returners, that has a lot of new guys, like this is a great way to start.
Speaking of new guys, a lot of new guys, I believe 11 new players on this particular roster, Clinton. What do you make of the fit?
I'd like to see them play a little in the preseason. I mean, honestly, I understand that the schedule is soft and so on and so forth, but we still don't really know, and it's a little confusing. AD says nothing's going right. LeBron says the practices have been better than ever. So how about we get a product together on the court so we can at least have an idea of what the big three is going to be or plus one is going to be? And look, I'm not really certain that that'll happen in the preseason, but I'd like to see it happen once. Give me a quarter. Give me a half. You know what I mean?
I think it will.
Show me what it looks like. How much are we going to see? I'm wondering because, if AD's saying this now and LeBron's saying this then, I'm as excited as I've been to see this Laker team in a long time because of exactly what you said. They seem to be aligning.
I would expect, and Ramona, you tell me because you've covered this team a lot longer than I have, I expect them to probably play a couple of games, 2 or 3 games together, a few minutes here and there, and then that last one, everyone will basically take off again. But those last, I guess those 3 or 4 last games, they'll play 2 or 3 of those.
Look, I don't think AD and LeBron or Russ, they don't all need to play together in the preseason games. They play plenty in practices. What the Lakers are trying to get out of this preseason is to see which one of the role players that they signed. Kendrick Nunn, Wayne Ellington, Halen Horton-Tucker. He was there, right? He's not paid like a role player, okay? He's going to be a big player for them. They want to see which of those guys is shining. They want to get a feel for those guys. And you saw some big minutes for DeAndre Jordan, for Dwight Howard yesterday. They're putting the rest of the team out there to see what they have in a lot of the new guys. And so,
come for more than the game. Come for it all.
It was quite a Laker debut for the 3rd time for Dwight Howard. He played 13 minutes, fouled out, picked up a flagrant and a technical. That's a full day's work. Ramona, expect Dwight to be the enforcer for the Lakers this season.
Yeah, that's kind of his role. That's Dwight. Like, you got 6 fouls, use him, big guy. Afterwards, he was laughing about it because he was like, I'm so strong. I forget how strong I am. Okay.
I mean, I don't know that I would call him an enforcer. Agitator is probably a better word. Instigator. He reminds me of like Pat Bev in A Big Man's Body. You know what I'm saying? So he's also still a little too nice and a little too goofy for me to look at him as a guy that's an enforcer. And he's also a little too skilled for that. I think they're going to need him a little bit more than just people.
Being in the history of this game, being always there.
The spin move, the finish. Giannis Antetokounmpo was one of the most iconic performances in the storied history of the NBA Finals. And the slam from Antetokounmpo. The long wait has ended after a half century. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions once again. I'm at the top.
I wanted to do it here in the city. I wanted to do it with these guys. Did it.
Welcome back to The Jump as the preseason begins and gets ready to get into full swing this week. We wanted to take a look back on the year that was as we welcome in senior NBA photographer Andrew Bernstein. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, George, thanks so much. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, listen, you document it all, so let's go on this journey of last year here together. Let's start last December 22nd when the Lakers had their ring night in an empty arena on opening night. Andrew, what was the environment like being there in person?
Well, it was a fitting conclusion to the bubble experience, I got to tell you, which, it ended only a couple of months before that. I personally had spent 53 days in the bubble and witnessed probably the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. The Lakers winning a championship in front of nobody with confetti falling. Yeah. And then they're getting their rings essentially in front of the same group of nobody. These guys played hard in the bubble. They earned the ring. It's too bad they couldn't get the adulation of the crowd and unveil their banner and do a parade and all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, a ring is a ring.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone's chalking it up any other way. I don't think there's any question about that. That one is going down as a trophy and a championship and a Larry O'Brien and all those rings that all those guys got. All right, next, on to June 30th. Chris Paul finally makes his first finals as the Suns eliminate the Clippers. There's an incredible shot you had of CP3 hugging Coach Monty Williams. What do you remember from that scene?
Well, I saw that unfold when Monty took Chris out of the game at the end, and it was just an outpouring of emotion and love. And, here are two guys who were together. Monty coached Chris as a rookie, and 16 years later, they get to the promised land together. Not unlike Michael Jordan's emotional outburst when he won his first championship in '91, just letting it go. But there's true love between those two. And I was just glad that the seas parted, because there were a lot of people in the way. I was on the other end of the court when I shot that. So luckily I was able to bang out a couple of frames.
Yeah, and again, it was just what a great moment for Chris Paul, who's dealt with plenty of heartbreak. And I'm sure you've captured those unfortunate moments on the court as well. But he got that opportunity to play in the finals, which is awesome. So 2 weeks later, this happened in Game 4.
With Tucker on him, throws it up for Ayton. Shot blocked by Antetokounmpo. What a block from Giannis.
One of the greatest blocks in NBA history as Giannis denied Ayton's alley-oop. How did you get that shot from the basket area?
Well, George, I do a group of remote cameras that are set up on the opposite end of the court from where I'm sitting. So this happens to be one of maybe 7 remotes I had set up. The camera is embedded into the stanchion pad. There's a hole cut out at the bottom, and the camera is inserted there with a wide-angle lens. And so this moment is captured from, 7 different angles. I'm pushing a button literally on the other side of the court. I mean, if you blew up that photo, you would see me on the other end of the court. And, it was a bang, bang play, as you just saw in the video. I was really lucky. Honestly, luck was with me that day because I timed it, I think, perfectly. But that doesn't always happen. But I was super thankful to get this moment in Game 4.
Well, listen, I mean, maybe luck played a role in it, but you're pretty awesome at what you do, okay? Which is why every year you come on this show and why every year there's so many great photographs of the NBA. All right, let's move on to Game 6. The Bucks win their first title in 50 years. What moments did you find during that particular celebration that stood out?
Wow, what an incredible moment. I mean, Giannis's story is just a whole other episode, I mean, what an incredible life's journey he's had. And he's such a humble, genuine guy. I mean, I wish I could spend more time around him. I hope I do the rest of my career and his career. But to see, the city of Milwaukee, finally win after 50 years, Kareem and Oscar are sitting courtside, and there's a lot of, a lot of history, a lot of threads there, and Coach Bud, and it's a wonderful organization, a great city, a city I hadn't spent a lot of time in, quite frankly, throughout my career. But it was beautiful. It was really beautiful, a beautiful moment, and well-deserved. I mean, it was a heck of a finals, and I guess the better team won, but man, that was some battle between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely a battle, and Giannis gets to stake his claim to the crown, right? As he mentioned earlier in the video we mentioned, or we showed earlier, he's part of the history now forever. Last one. Just a couple of weeks ago, you were at the Clippers groundbreaking for their new arena in Inglewood. What do you think the new Intuit Arena will mean for the Clippers?
Well, that was incredible. I mean, I have to preface this answer by saying I'm the last remaining person associated with the Clippers who was there on opening night in 1984. Wow. After Ralph Lawler retired, it left me as the last standing person. So this will be the third arena, God willing, knock on wood, that I'll work in, that the Clippers will play in, Sports Arena, Staples Center, now the Intuit Dome. I think it's great. I mean, Steve Ballmer has a vision. The city of Inglewood is going to benefit. The fans are going to have an arena that's dedicated just to their team. They don't have to share it with anybody. And, it was a great, exciting time. I mean, anytime you put Steve Ballmer with a microphone, you can have some, moments. And that was truly a great event.
I'm sure it'll be a beautiful backdrop as well for new photographs for you moving forward once that thing gets built. Is there any date you have circled on your calendar for this upcoming season?
Well, anytime the Lakers play the Clippers in Staples Center, that's definitely circled on my calendar. Also, I'm really looking forward, I'm sure like you and everyone else, to when the NBA unveils the NBA 75. I mean,
yes.
There's a lot of speculation who's going to be on that list. That's going to be coming up soon. So that's going to be pretty amazing. And, I'm just so happy to have the season back. I was at a game yesterday, preseason game, and it's almost normal. So that's pretty cool. And let's get a great season in here because we all deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, thank you, Andrew, so much for joining us. Continued success. You do such unbelievable these 30-footers. All right, Brian. Expecting a big year from Dame Dollar or what?
Well, look, since we've last seen Dame, he's won a gold medal, he got married, and he released the most recent Dame Dollar album. He's in a really happy place right now. The question is he going to be in a happy place in January? That's the question I have, but today everything's great.
I try not to take greatness for granted in the NBA, especially when we do this every day. But when you see guys making a shot from the logo, it's become so routine for him and Steph Curry to just do that.
I think it was like
that's
40 in a row.
amazing. He can make them from there all.
Blake Griffin and a bunch of these guys who will be coming back. His return game in Detroit, November 5th, as a member of the Nets, played there last year, but less than 1,000 fans. James Harden scheduled back in Houston with a full capacity. So, look, he won MVP in Houston, 6-time first-team All-NBA there, and second leading scorer in franchise history. Then KD will play in San Francisco for the first time in front of fans on January 29th. He was a 2-time champ in the Bay, 2-time Finals MVP, 3-time All-NBA selection. And Kyle Lowry, Mr. Raptor, returns to Toronto on February 3rd. He's a champion and a 6-time All-Star and the franchise leader in assists. And lastly, Ben Simmons. We don't have a return date for you, but his future in Philly is unsure at best at this point. He's a 3-time All-Star, former Rookie of the Year, and made first-team All-Defense twice. So here it is, all in writing. A lot of dates to circle on your calendar. Brian, which one jumps out to you?
Well, I personally only care about the Kyle Lowry game because that's going to be a celebratory moment where he's going to be cheered loudly. By the way, Danny Green is making his return to Toronto tonight for the first time since winning the title.
That's right.
And he's still not getting his ring. Still not getting his ring tonight.
Gosh.
I've never seen anything like it. Sorry, I hijacked this segment. I just thought I should bring that out. But another event in Toronto I'm looking forward to, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, will they have the statue ready for him by then? By the time it's a little quick for a bronze, but he'll get cheered. I actually think James Harden is going to get cheered too, and I think Kevin Durant will be cheered. Those two, like James Harden, he had an incredible career for the Rockets. It didn't end well, but he's Mr. Hughes. He's Mr. Hughes. He did so much for them.
You think he's going to get cheered? I don't think he's going to get cheered.
I do. I actually. Well, look, they got Jalen Green now. Everybody's happy.
So.
Look, it was a messy exit, but I think people will forgive and forget.
By that time, they're going to be 30 games under 500. True. They're not going to be happy.
Yeah, I'm with Brian.
But the real answer to your question, George, the real answer is whatever Ben Simmons' return game is.
Okay, speaking of which,
that is going to be.
You've got some information on that, right?
Look, we're all watching to see, is Ben going to show? Okay, this is the first game that the Sixers are playing without him. It's a preseason game, but you still get Doc money if he doesn't show up. He's being fined for not showing up. Brian reported over the weekend that his first check didn't go through, but. From what I understand, this was never about the money. He's still status quo right now. Now, we're going to have to keep checking in on this. We'll check in next week and every game that he misses, because each game is going to be money that comes out of the check. But when and if Ben gets traded and he eventually returns to Philadelphia, I do not expect that to be kind. And I think that speaks to the larger point of, from Ben's side, if he doesn't show up in Philly, or if he ended up, at some point showing up and making things uncomfortable there, what kind of Ben Simmons would even show up? At that point, things are so toxic there.
Wait, but do you think that's a possibility that he could still show up?
It depends on how long this goes, right, Brian? What's your? We've seen standoffs before.
Yeah, I think we actually have to look at the NFL because. Mm-hmm. This is a situation that is not really we see in the NBA very often. When guys haven't shown, it's because they haven't signed. We don't see guys under contract not show up. So in the NFL, what they have been doing recently is holding in, where they show up and basically don't play. And I think if hindsight is 20/20 here, that's what Ben Simmons should have done. He should have arrived in Philadelphia, sat on the bench and said, I am just not going to play. I've got a sore back, or going to do what John Wall is doing, which even though it's an agreement with the team, he's essentially sidelined until they can trade him. By holding out, it creates this whole series of unanticipated and unprecedented moments like this money that was due him. And the Sixers took a NFL-like approach to it, which is they put the money that they owed him, $8 million, they put it in escrow instead of giving it to him so they could chip the fines off as they go along. Had they waited until he got the actual fine money to be a high number, he would have had IOUs due to the Sixers. This way, they can actually take the actual money away from him with the intent of never giving it back. That is what they do in the NFL. So this is turning into an NFL style holdout. And by the way, that is not a direction the NBA wants to go in because it obviously creates a lot of problems and renegotiations in the NFL they don't have in the NBA.
Ramona, obviously this will put a lot on Joel Embiid's shoulders, which pretty big shoulders, right? Pretty broad shoulders.
Yep.
But is there another gear, I guess, for Joel in this particular situation?
He thinks so. I mean, he's going into this season thinking he's added moves to his game. There's going to be no doubt of where the offense is running through. He's going to take more shots per game than he probably ever has. That's his goal, at least. And I think that he sets up, and we had those MVP odds. If Ben Simmons does not play for the Sixers this year, I think you really have to look at Joel Embiid. He was the runner-up last year, and if he can play enough games, he should be in there. And especially if they play well, they're really high on Tyrese Maxey. They really like him in that spot, and they're very high on this. And in a lot of ways, that lineup right there is geared more towards Embiid's skill set than when they have to do the making room for each other with Ben Simmons.
And Brian, with Tobias Harris, I mean, he's another max player. Like, we don't even talk about him, but he's certainly someone that can elevate his game at this point, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for Tobias. He thought he should have been an all-star last year. He wasn't really that close to making it, but that door is open. But here's the thing. They're taking away one of the top 3 or 4 defensive players in the league off of their roster. They are not going to just not feel that. They're going to feel it. They were the number 1 seed in the East last year, bona fide championship contender. You don't lose a guy like Ben Simmons and all of a sudden are still in the same spot. I do agree with Ramona. I mean, I was somebody who was beating the drum for Embiid to be MVP last year, but he missed so many games that it became very hard to vote for him. But that's the thing with Embiid. He misses games. He got hurt then in the playoffs. If he's not missing games, he's playing through injuries. So, you know, it's one thing to have a team like they had last year. It's another thing to not have Ben Simmons and then knowing that Embiid's going to miss a significant percentage of games. I just don't think they're the same team without him. And that's why it's a conundrum for Philly, because they can't just trade him for nothing. They've got to trade him for players or player that can keep that same level. And it is not an easy level to maintain because, you know, Ben Simmons.
So said his goal is to average 10 assists per game this season. Brian, what are your realistic expectations for the Rockets?
Lots and lots and lots of losing. They are geared to lose. They're one of the youngest teams in NBA history. And one of the ways you guarantee losing in the NBA is by having a young backcourt, and they have the youngest.
Look, they're set up to where you want to just find 1 or 2 or 3 young players to build your core around. They're really excited they got Jalen Green. Brian's right. They're going to lose a lot of games. You just hope that doesn't change the culture going forward. But if you can find 2 or 3 guys that you feel you can build a team around, that's season's a success.
Moving on, Lakers guard Malik Monk led the team in scoring with 15 points last night. He was asked about his new nickname. Let's take a listen.
Malik, Dwight told us yesterday that your new nickname is the Microwave. How do you feel about that one? And do you feel like that sums up your game?
They call me that, so I'll take the nickname. I don't give myself nicknames. But yeah, I think it fits well. I think it fits well. Perfect.
His teammate Anthony Davis also said, "We're still surprised we got him, to be honest." Ramona, how much of an impact do you think Malik will have this season?
I mean, Vinny Jones would like a word. That nickname has been used. But I like it. That's exactly what Malik Monk's going to give them. If he's on, he's going to be a great player for them. He was on last night, or yesterday during the day. It was a 12:30 start. But yeah, I'm surprised that he was available for them and at the price they got him for. But that's why you sign that 1-year deal. So you play for a team that's looking for a championship and hope you make a big impact.
Yeah, look, he was a lottery pick in Charlotte and had high expectations. Now he's a bench player, so the expectations are completely different. And he's going to have games where he plays great. I mean, he had moments in Charlotte where it was like, wow, this guy is going to be a star. But those were not that common. So, look, with what they're paying him, if he comes off the bench and has 15 games like that during the regular season, helps the Lakers win 4 or 5 games this way, he will have served his role. And as long as you keep your expectations to that, you'll be happy. If you expect that every night, like the Hornets were when they drafted him so highly, you're probably going to be let down.
If you look back at his career, there are certain games that he had against certain teams that he killed them. Ask Eric Spoelstra how good Malik Monk is. He felt like every time he played against them, it was a 30-point game. But to your point, not as consistent, but that isn't necessarily the role here. Like if he gets them 31 night, that's exactly what they asked for. They don't need it consistently, like when he was a lottery pick in Charlotte. All right, in an interview with SiriusXM Radio, New Orleans Pelicans star Zion Williamson said he's done missing the playoffs. The Pelicans have missed the postseason in Zion's first 2 seasons, and now he has his third new head